Don't drink it. Lily Bennett's whisper was so small it should have disappeared under the rain tapping the windows, but Vincent Moretti stopped with the glass an inch from his mouth. Her little hand clung to the sleeve of his black robe, her other palm covering the rim of the medicine water. Isabella Crane stood beside the silver tray, still smiling, though the spoon trembled once against the glass. She's frightened, Isabella said softly. Lily pointed at the bottle with the crooked label. That one is wearing the wrong sticker. 3 hours earlier, the upstairs recovery room of the Moretti mansion smelled of polished wood, antiseptic, and Isabella's pale floral perfume. The room had been arranged to look peaceful, but nothing inside it truly rested. The curtains were half drawn. The oxygen machine breathed quietly in the corner. A private nurse's cart stood beside the wall, locked and neat, with cotton pads, gloves, and a row of small bottles facing forward like obedient soldiers. Vincent Moretti sat propped against white pillows, his face thinner than it had been a month ago, his silver signet ring loose on his finger, his father's old watch resting on the table beside him. He looked less like a man recovering and more like a king being slowly removed from his own throne. Clara Bennett moved silently along the far side of the room, folding towels no one had asked her to fold. Her employee badge swung from her collar whenever she bent down. She kept Lily close, one hand always finding the child's shoulder, because a 4-year-old in a Mafia house was supposed to be quiet, clean, and invisible. Lily was white, small, and serious in the way children become when they have learned that grown-ups get nervous around power. She held her rag doll, Molly, by one arm and watched the room more than she played in it. Isabella came in just before the evening dose, carrying the silver tray herself. She wore cream silk, pearl earrings, and the kind of calm smile that made servants lower their eyes. "You should be resting, my love," she told Vincent, setting the tray down close enough that the medicine bottles clicked softly against the glass. Dr. Adrian Vale followed with a black leather folder under his arm. "No visitors after the dose," he said, not looking at Clara. "Mr. Moretti needs consistency." Marco Moretti stood near the doorway, hands folded, grief arranged carefully across his face. "We all want him strong again," Marco said, but his eyes went to the watch on the table, then to Vincent's shaking hand, then to the pen lying beside a sealed folder on the dresser. Lily noticed the pen because it had a gold top shaped like a tiny lion. She noticed small things. She noticed that Nurse Evelyn Parks always placed the bottles in the same order. The blue cap first, then the white cap, then the little brown bottle that smelled sharp. She noticed that Isabella did not follow that order. Isabella lifted one bottle, turned her back slightly, and used her thumbnail to smooth down a label that had bubbled near the edge. The motion lasted less than a second. To everyone else, it looked like nothing. To Lily, it looked like someone trying to put a doll's dress on the wrong doll. Clara whispered, "Lily, don't stare." Lily lowered her eyes, but she kept watching from under her lashes. Isabella poured the medicine into water, stirred it slowly, and spoke to Vincent in a voice so gentle it made the room colder. "After this, you'll sleep. Tomorrow will be easier." Vincent's mouth tightened. "You said that yesterday." Dr. Vale smiled without warmth. "Decline often feels worse before improvement."
Marco stepped closer.
"Trust the doctor, Vince. Trust family." At that word, Vincent looked at his brother, and for the first time all evening, something unreadable crossed his face. Lily shifted beside Clara's skirt. She saw the tray again. She saw the bottle with Vincent Moretti's name printed cleanly across the label. She saw the edge of the sticker lifting like a loose bandage. And then she saw what made her fingers close around Molly's cloth hand. The bottle on Isabella's tray had Vincent's name, but the blue cap Lily remembered was gone. The missing blue cap stayed in Lily's mind the way a wrong note stayed in a song. She did not know the names of medicines or why adults spoke lower when bottles were involved, or why Dr. Vale always wrote in his folder before anyone was allowed to ask questions. She only knew that the bottle Mr. Vincent drank from every night had a blue cap, and the one on Isabella's tray did not. It had a white cap, shiny and clean, as if someone had wiped it too carefully. Clara felt Lily stiffen beside her and gently pressed a hand to the back of her sweater. "Eyes down, sweetheart," she murmured. "We're almost done." But Lily's eyes would not obey. Isabella lifted the glass and held it toward Vincent with both hands, the picture of devotion, the kind of woman who could make poison look like prayer. "Small sips," she said. "Dr. Vale said it works better if you don't fight it." Vincent looked at the glass, then at Dr. Vale. "I don't remember fighting medicine before."
Doutor Valles Millet Politelli.
"You've been tired, Vincent. Confusion is normal during recovery." Marco gave a quiet sigh from the doorway, soft enough to sound concerned, loud enough to be heard. "That's why we need less noise in this room." His eyes slid to Clara. "And fewer distractions." Clara lowered her head. Her employee badge swung forward, catching the lamplight. Clara Bennett, household staff. The plastic edge was cracked from years of use. Marco's gaze stayed on it too long. Vincent noticed. He noticed because men like him survived by watching what people wanted when they thought no one was looking. He did not move. He did not accuse. He only let his hand fall from the glass to the blanket, his signet ring pressing into the white fabric. "The child is staring at the medicine," Marco said. "Children stare at anything shiny," Isabella answered before Clara could speak. Then she bent toward Lily, her perfume reaching the little girl before her hand did. "Isn't that right, sweetheart? You're just curious." Lily hugged Molly against her chest. The doll's stitched face bent under her fingers. "It had a blue hat," she whispered. Isabella's smile did not disappear. That was what made it worse. It stayed exactly where it was, perfectly shaped and perfectly still. "A blue hat?" she repeated gently. "She means the cap," Clara said quickly, embarrassed and frightened at the same time. "She makes little names for things." "I'm sorry, Miss Crane. She doesn't understand." "Of course she doesn't," Marco said. "She's 4. The number landed like a verdict. For meant too small to know. For meant easy to dismiss. For meant anyone could decide what she had seen before she finished saying it. Clara tightened her hand around Lily's shoulder. "Say you're sorry," she whispered. Not because Lily had lied, but because Clara knew what happened to poor women who made powerful families uncomfortable. Lily's lower lip trembled. She looked at Vincent, not at Isabella, not at Marco, not at the doctor. "I'm sorry," she said. Then, after a tiny breath, she added, "But it was blue." The room went still in a different way. Not silent. There were still sounds. The rain against the windows, the oxygen machine, the little clink of Dr. Vale closing his folder. But underneath them, something had shifted. Vincent slowly turned his head toward the tray. "Adrian," he said. One word. No anger in it. That made Dr. Vale straighten. "Yes." "When did the packaging change?" Dr. Vale did not look at the bottle right away. He looked at Isabella first. Only for a moment. Only long enough for Vincent to see it. "Recently," the doctor said, "the pharmacy sometimes updates suppliers." "Without telling Evelyn?" Vincent asked. Nurse Evelyn Parks, who had been standing near the cart with her hands folded, lifted her eyes but did not speak. Dr. Vale's expression warmed into professional patience. "Nurses don't always need to be informed of supplier-level changes." Evelyn's jaw tightened. Clara saw it. Lily saw it too, though she did not know what it meant. Isabella stepped closer to the bed and lowered her voice. "My love, please. You need to take this before it gets too late." The words were tender. Her fingers were not. They had curled around the stem of the glass so tightly that the skin around her knuckles had gone pale. Vincent looked at those fingers. Then he looked at Lily's small hand clutching Molly. He still did not believe the child. Not yet. But he no longer believed the room either. He reached for the glass, and Isabella's breath softened with relief. Then he set it down untouched on the tray. "In a minute," he said. Marco's face did not change, but one shoe shifted against the floor. Dr. Vale reopened his folder as if paper could cover a heartbeat. Clara pulled Lily half a step back, ready to disappear into the hallway, but Lily suddenly pointed again, not at the bottle this time, but at the edge of the label. Under the lifted white sticker, just beneath Vincent Moretti's printed name, a thin strip of older paper showed through, and on it was the torn curve of a blue letter. The torn curve of the blue letter was so small that anyone else could have called it nothing. Printing error. A wrinkle in the paper. A child's imagination finding colors where there were none. But Vincent Moretti had built his life on small things that did not belong. A glass moved 2 inches, a man blinking before he lied, a chair left warm in an empty room. His eyes stayed on that strip of blue beneath the white label, and for the first time, Isabella's hand moved too quickly. "It's just adhesive," she said, reaching for the bottle. Vincent did not raise his voice. He did not even lift his head from the pillow. He only shifted one finger, the one with the silver signet ring, and placed it across her wrist before she touched the tray. "Leave it." The word was quiet. The room obeyed it. Isabella's smile softened into hurt, a perfect little wound placed on her face for everyone to see. "Vincent," she whispered, "you're letting a child upset you." Marco stepped in before the silence could become dangerous. "This is exactly what Dr. Vale warned us about. Stress, confusion, suspicion. You need rest, not a household investigation." Clara drew Lily backward, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She knew how rooms like this worked. If the powerful felt embarrassed, the powerless paid for it later in kitchens, laundry rooms, and employee files no one else saw. "Mr. Moretti, please," Clara said. She didn't mean any disrespect. Lily looked up at her mother, then at the bottle on the tray, then down at the pocket of her cream sweater. Her small fingers disappeared inside it. Clara felt the movement and froze. "Lily," she whispered, but it was too late. Lily pulled out the thing she had been holding all afternoon. A small medicine bottle with a blue cap, wrapped in her child's handkerchief with Molly's stitched face printed crookedly in the corner. She had wrapped it carefully, the way children wrap treasures they did not fully understand. She stepped forward and set it on the blanket beside Vincent's knee. The bottle made a soft plastic sound against the white fabric. No one breathed for a second. This bottle looked older than the one on the tray. Its label had been torn halfway off. The sticky edge was gray with lint from Lily's pocket. Under the ripped part, a faint line of numbers showed through, broken but readable. Along the rim near the cap, there was a pale nude smear, almost invisible unless the lamp caught it just right. Isabella saw it. Her chin lifted a fraction. Dr. Vale saw it too, and immediately looked down at his folder. Marco did not look at the bottle at all. That was what made Vincent notice him. "Where did you get that?" Vincent asked. He was looking at Lily now, not warmly, not softly, but directly, the way he looked at men across tables when money, blood, or truth was involved. Lily held Molly by the arm and rubbed the doll's cloth hand between 2 fingers. "In the flower trash," she said. "By the little room with the cold box." Nurse Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the locked medication alcove beside the hall, where flowers from Vincent's well-wishers were trimmed each morning and medical supplies were stored behind a keypad. Isabella gave a small laugh, breathy and sympathetic. "The flower trash? Lily, sweetheart, that could have been thrown away because it was empty." Lily shook her head. "No. It had Mr. Vincent's name." "You can't read," Marco said. "She recognizes names," Clara said before fear could stop her. Everyone turned to her, and she swallowed hard. "She recognizes his because it's on the door, and on the envelopes, and on the tray cards." For a moment, Clara looked like she wished she could take the words back. Vincent looked at her employee badge, then at the bottle in Lily's handkerchief, then back to the tray. 2 bottles. 1 blue cap. 1 clean white cap. 1 torn label. 1 label too smooth except for the lifted corner hiding blue beneath it. Lily pointed to the bottle she had brought. "This one was cold," she said. "The other one was pretending." Dr. Vale closed his folder with a soft snap. "Mr. Moretti, children create stories to explain objects they don't understand." "Then explain it for her," Vincent said. Dr. Vale's mouth opened, but no answer came fast enough. Isabella's hand drifted to her sleeve, where a tiny crescent of sticky white paper clung near the cuff, almost hidden against the cream silk. Lily saw it before anyone else did. She lifted one finger and whispered, "She still has some sticker on her." The room followed Lily's finger to Isabella's sleeve. For one thin second, the tiny crescent of sticky white paper on the cream silk became larger than the silver tray, larger than the doctor's folder, larger than Vincent Moretti himself lying pale beneath the white blankets. Isabella looked down, saw it, and did not panic. That was what made her frightening. She gave a soft, embarrassed laugh and brushed the paper away with two fingers as if it were lint from the laundry. "Children notice everything except what matters," she said gently. "I was arranging the bottles earlier. Labels peel. It happens." Lily did not argue. She held Molly tighter with one hand and kept the blue-capped bottle wrapped in the little handkerchief with the other. Clara's face had gone gray. Humiliation did not always arrive as shouting. Sometimes it arrived as a beautiful woman in silk explaining that your child was too young to understand the room she stood in. Marco stepped farther inside, letting the doorway frame him like he belonged there more than anyone else. Behind him, two house security men and Vincent's consigliere, Polly Russo, appeared in the hall, drawn by the stillness. "Vince," Marco said, soft enough to sound careful. "This is getting out of hand. We have a sick man, a confused child, and a maid who should know better than to let her daughter handle medication." Clara lowered her eyes. The words landed cleanly. Maid, daughter, medication. 3 reasons no one had to listen. Vincent looked at Lily. She stood so small beside the bed that the blanket nearly reached her chin, but her hand did not loosen around the bottle. He looked at Dr. Vale next. "Bring the original order." Dr. Vale blinked once. "The chart is here." "Not the chart," Vincent said. "The original order." Nurse Evelyn Parks moved before anyone gave her permission not to. She crossed to the wall cabinet beside the nurse's cart and unlocked the small medical safe with her own code. The keypad gave one quiet beep. She removed a sealed folder, blue-striped at the top, with the hospital's electronic prescription printout inside. Dr. Vale's smile thinned. "Vincent, this is unnecessary."
Supplier labels vary.
A child's memory of a cap color is not a clinical concern. Vincent's eyes did not leave him. "Then this will be quick." Evelyn placed the prescription on the overbed table. Vincent did not touch it. His hand still trembled too much, and everyone in the room saw it. Marco saw it most of all. Dr. Vale put on his reading glasses with deliberate calm, as though professionalism could press the walls back into place. Vincent nodded toward the bottle on the silver tray. "Read that one first." Dr. Vale picked it up. "Moretti, Vincent. Night dose. 2 milligrams. White cap. Lot number A7492. He set it down. "And the child's bottle," Vincent said.
Doutor Vale hesitated.
"Not long. Just long enough for Nurse Evelyn to lift her eyes." He took the blue-capped bottle from the handkerchief, careful not to touch the sticky torn part of the label. "Moretti, Vincent," he read. "Night dose. 2 milligrams. Lot number." His voice slowed. "B3168. Evelyn leaned over the prescription before she could stop herself. Her lips parted. Vincent heard that small breath and turned his head. "Say it." Evelyn swallowed. "The original hospital order lists B3168. No one spoke. Rain touched the windows in soft, uneven taps. Isabella folded her hands in front of her waist. Marco shifted his weight but kept his face composed. Dr. Vale removed his glasses and gave a patient sigh, the kind doctors used when families were frightened and needed to be managed. It could be a transition batch. Pharmacies relabel during supply changes. Evelyn's voice came out, quiet but firm. "Not this month. We received no supplier change notice." Marco turned on her with a look so polished it almost passed for concern. "Nurse Parks, with respect, are you certain you want to contradict the attending physician in front of his patient?" Evelyn's mouth closed. The room had made her small too. Lily looked from Evelyn to Clara, then down at the blue-capped bottle. "He always drinks the blue hat," she whispered. "Every night after the clock sings." Vincent's eyes sharpened. What clock? Lily pointed toward the hallway. The little safe clock. Beep, beep. Evelyn looked back at the medical safe. The access tone, she said slowly. Vincent's voice dropped. Check it. This time Dr. Vale moved first, stepping toward the safe as if to help, but Polly Russo blocked him without touching him. Evelyn pressed the log function. The tiny screen lit up with clean blue numbers. The seal on the safe was intact. No forced entry.
No scratch.
No broken hinge. Marco's face eased, almost imperceptibly, as if the room had returned to his side. Then the access history appeared. Last opened, 1:15 a.m. user ID, Clara Bennett. The name Clara Bennett sat on the safe's tiny blue screen like a sentence already passed. Clara stared at it as if the letters had been carved into her skin. No, she whispered. I didn't open that. Marco stepped in smoothly, not loud, not cruel enough to be obvious, but cold enough to make every servant in the hallway lower their eyes. Your badge did. Clara's hand went to the plastic card clipped to her uniform collar. It was still there, cracked at the edge, hanging from the same faded blue lanyard she had worn for 3 years. I was in the staff house, she said. Lily was coughing. I never came upstairs. Dr. Vale closed the safe log with a soft tap. People panic when they're caught, he said almost kindly. It doesn't mean they're evil. Sometimes desperation makes good people do foolish things. Clara looked at Vincent then, and the shame in her face was worse than fear. She was not asking him to love her. She was asking him not to let a screen erase her. Lily stepped in front of her mother's skirt, so small her head barely reached the top of the mattress. She held the blue-capped bottle wrapped in Molly's handkerchief against her chest and shook her head. Mommy was in bed, she said.
Marco Said.
Lily, sweetheart, you were probably sleeping. Lily looked at him and did not blink.
No.
Mommy coughed. The bell clock sang twice. No one answered at first because it sounded like nothing. A child's phrase, a bedtime memory. But Vincent's eyes shifted toward Nurse Evelyn. Bell clock. Evelyn swallowed. There's an old wall clock in the staff house. It chimes on the quarter hour. Twice would be 1:30. Marco's mouth tightened. The safe opened at 1:15. Then check the hallway footage, Vincent said. Dr. Vale began to speak, but Vincent lifted one hand from the blanket. The gesture was weak. The room still obeyed. Polly Russo moved to the security panel in the hallway and called the feed to the wall monitor mounted above the nurse's cart. The screen flickered, then showed the upstairs corridor in flat black and white. At 1:12 a.m., a figure in a dark staff coat crossed from the service stairwell toward the medication alcove, head turned away from the camera. 3 minutes later, the safe log marked Clara's badge.
Marco leaned closer.
There. Clara's breath broke. That isn't me. It's your hallway, Marco said. Your badge. Your kind of coat. Clara reached for Lily, but Lily did not move. She pointed at the screen. Mommy walks soft, she said. That person walks click-click. Vincent's gaze sharpened. The figure on the monitor took 4 steps before the footage stuttered. When it returned, the corridor was empty. Polly frowned and tapped the controls. There's a gap. How much? Vincent asked. Polly checked the file properties. 47 seconds. Isabella, who had been silent too long, gave a fragile laugh. Security systems skip. Storms do that. Listen to us. We are interrogating shadows because a little girl likes bottle caps. Vincent did not look at her. He looked at the monitor, then at Clara's badge, then at Lily's hands folded around the blue-capped bottle. Polly, he said, copy that file. Now, Evelyn photographed the safe log, both bottles, the torn label, and Clara's badge where it is. No one touches anything without gloves. The room changed again. Not because Vincent believed Clara. Not because he trusted Lily. Because he had stopped treating the moment as confusion and started treating it as evidence. Marco noticed it too. Vince, don't turn your sick room into a courtroom. Vincent's voice was low. Someone already did. Polly sent the footage to 2 drives and sealed one in a clear evidence sleeve from Evelyn's cart. Then Evelyn left for the laundry room with a security man and returned carrying a dark staff coat pinched between gloved fingers. It was not Clara's size. It was longer in the sleeves, narrower at the waist, and the right pocket had a faint powdery scent that did not belong to soap or bleach. Lily wrinkled her nose. "Flower smell," she whispered. Clara closed her eyes. Isabella's hand rose to her own wrist, where her pale floral perfume lived beneath a gold bracelet, and for the first time that night, Vincent saw her stop herself from covering it. Vincent watched Isabella's hand stop halfway to her wrist, and the stillness told him more than a confession would have. Men lied loudly when they were afraid, but the careful ones made smaller mistakes. They protected a cuff. They covered a scent. They looked away from the object that knew too much. The dark staff coat hung from Evelyn's gloved fingers, its sleeves too long for Clara, its waist too narrow, the faint floral perfume rising from the pocket like a whisper that should not have survived the laundry room. Isabella gave a soft breath. Half the house uses floral detergent. Clara looked at her, then looked down because servants were not supposed to correct women who wore pearls in sick rooms. Lily did it for her. "Mommy smells like soap," she said. "Not flowers." No one laughed. The rain slid down the windows in long silver lines, and somewhere below, deep in the house, a dryer turned with a low, steady thump. For one small moment, the world felt ordinary. Machines working, water falling, a little girl holding a rag doll by the arm. Then Vincent turned his face toward Polly. "Wake my attorney." Marco's eyes sharpened. "Vince, it's almost midnight. Then he'll remember I pay him well." Polly stepped into the hall with his phone. Dr. Vale tried to regain the shape of authority. "This has gone far beyond medical relevance. You need rest." Vincent looked at him. "Then you'll want this cleared up quickly." He told Evelyn to check the staff house call log. Not loudly, not dramatically, just as if he were asking for another blanket. Evelyn crossed to the small nurse's station outside the room and pulled up the internal system. Lily stood close to Clara's knee, still holding the blue-capped bottle wrapped in Molly's handkerchief, as if keeping it warm could keep the truth alive. "I don't want Mommy in trouble," she whispered. Vincent heard her. He did not soften. Not on the outside. "Did your mother tell you to bring that bottle?" Lily shook her head. "No." "Did anyone promise you anything?" Another shake. "I just didn't want you to drink the wrong one." The answer was so plain that it made the room colder. Evelyn returned with a printed log trembling slightly in her hand. At 1:10 a.m., Clara Bennett used the staff house medical buzzer. Reason entered, child coughing. Nurse desk acknowledged at 1:11. Clara covered her mouth. The safe upstairs had been opened at 1:15. The figure in the coat had walked the hall at 1:12. Clara could not have been in 2 places at once. Marco looked at the paper as if it had insulted him. "A buzzer can be pressed by anyone. From inside her assigned unit," Evelyn said, more quietly than bravely. "The system records the room panel." Vincent took that in without a word. Polly came back with the attorney on speaker. Within minutes, a sealed packet was pulled from the locked drawer near the dresser. The one Marco had glanced at earlier when he thought Vincent was too weak to notice. The packet was thick, cream-colored, and marked for a private signing at La Vela the next afternoon. Medical incapacity review. Temporary authority transfer. Moretti Hospitality Group, Harbor Holdings, and La Vela Management. Dr. Vale's preliminary certification sat on page 3. Marco's office had prepared the witness list. Isabella's charity foundation appeared on an attached pharmacy invoice for a medication Dr. Vale claimed was only a supplier change. Vincent stared at the pages for a long time. Not at the money, not at the businesses, at the neatness of it. A death did not need a bullet if paperwork could make a living man disappear from his own life. "You didn't wait for my funeral," he said, barely above a breath. "You scheduled it with paperwork." Marco's grief finally flickered at the edges. "It's a precaution. Family protection." Vincent looked past him to Clara. standing there with her badge still clipped to her uniform like a target someone had pinned on her chest. He saw, too late, how perfectly she had been chosen. Poor, quiet, employed, afraid, easy to doubt. And for the first time that night, Vincent Moretti understood that the trap had not only been set for him, it had been built around the one woman in the room least able to survive being blamed. He did not say that aloud. Vincent only looked at Clara's badge, still clipped to her chest like a false confession, and then he looked at Lily, whose small fingers were wrapped around the blue-capped bottle as if it were the last honest thing in the room. "Polly," he said quietly, "Mrs. Bennet and the child don't leave this floor without Evelyn." Marco's eyes narrowed. "You're giving the maid protection now?" Vincent's face did not change. "I'm preserving a witness." The word witness moved through the room like a door closing. Isabella lowered her lashes, wounded and graceful. Dr. Vale began to protest, but Vincent closed his eyes as if the medicine, the fever, and the night had finally beaten him. "I'm tired," he said. "Tomorrow at La Vela, we'll sign whatever needs signing. Until then, no more noise." Marco's relief came too quickly. Isabella touched Vincent's shoulder with two careful fingers. "That's wise, my love." Lily watched those fingers. She watched Isabella lean close, watched the pearl earring brush her neck, watched the woman's smile return because she thought the room belonged to her again. But Vincent's hand under the blanket had already moved once, slow and hidden, pressing the side button on his father's old watch. A faint click disappeared beneath the thing. Nurse Evelyn guided Clara and Lily into the adjoining sitting room, where the lights were softer and the couch smelled faintly of lemon polish. For a few minutes, there was only the small sound of Lily's breathing, the murmur of a television left on mute in the nurse's station, and the clock over the hallway chiming once. Clara knelt in front of Lily and whispered, "You were very brave, but don't say anything else unless Mr. Moretti asks you." Lily shook her head. "I don't want a prize." Clara's face broke for half a second. "I know, baby." Lily looked down at the bottle in her lap. "I just don't want him to drink the wrong one." In the recovery room, Vincent let them think he was slipping. He allowed Dr. Vale to check his pulse. He allowed Isabella to dim the lamp. He allowed Marco to step into the hallway and make a phone call in a voice low enough to seem private. But the watch on the bedside table kept listening. Its small brass hands moved over the face his father had worn for 40 years, and beneath the old glass, a tiny recorder light blinked once, then vanished. Downstairs, Polly worked without raising alarms. He copied the safe log again. He sent the damaged hallway footage to a technician he trusted more than family. He checked the charity pharmacy invoice attached to Isabella's foundation and found the delivery address was not the mansion, not the hospital, but a private clinic registered under Dr. Adrian Vale's secondary practice. At 2:06 a.m., Polly's phone vibrated on the hallway table. He did not answer it in front of anyone. He only turned the screen toward Vincent when he came back in. A recovered text thread had loaded halfway. Marco to Vale. Need the blue cap problem gone before the signing. Vincent read it once. Then he looked toward the sitting room, where Lily had fallen asleep against Clara's side with Molly under her chin. "Don't wake her," he said. Evelyn returned from the flower room just before dawn, pale from more than lack of sleep. In her gloved hand was a clear evidence sleeve. Inside it lay a torn strip of prescription label, wrinkled from damp stems, carrying the same blue curve Lily had seen under the fake sticker. When Evelyn opened the sleeve just enough to photograph it, the faint floral scent rose again. Not detergent, not flowers. Isabella. Vincent sat in the gray light, weaker than he wanted anyone to see, and smiled without warmth. "We go to La Vela." Polly looked at him. "You sure?" Vincent reached for the blue-capped bottle. Before he could close his hand around it, Lily's sleepy voice came from the doorway. "Take the right one with you." Vincent turned. Clara stood behind her, afraid to pull her back now. For the first time, Vincent nodded to the child as if she had given an order worth obeying. Across the hall, Isabella had just stepped from the guest room in fresh cream silk, and when she saw the blue-capped bottle in Vincent's hand instead of Lily's, her smile stopped before it reached her eyes. Isabella's smile stopped before it reached her eyes, and Vincent saw it. He did not ask why. He only closed his fingers around the blue-capped bottle and let Polly help him into the black overcoat waiting on the chair. By noon, La Vela looked exactly the way Marco wanted it to look. Warm wood, white tablecloths, brass lamps, family photographs on the walls, the smell of garlic, basil, and expensive wine drifting up from the kitchen below. The private dining room on the second floor had hosted baptisms, engagement dinners, quiet negotiations, and apologies that never became public. Today, a long table waited under a chandelier, set not for food but for signatures. A cream folder sat at Vincent's place. Beside it lay a gold-topped pen shaped like a lion. Marco stood behind the chair as if he had already inherited the room. Dr. Adrian Vale opened his black folder with careful hands. Isabella sat to Vincent's right in fresh cream silk, her perfume soft enough to deny, strong enough for Lily to recognize from the doorway. Clara held Lily close near the wall, not at the table, not with the family, exactly where the room believed a maid and her child belonged. Vincent entered slowly. His hand trembled. His breath seemed thin. Marco's eyes softened with relief. "Take your time, Vince," he said. "We're only here to protect you." Vincent lowered himself into the chair. He let the silence stretch until even the lawyers stopped shifting paper. Dr. Vale began reading the medical statement in a voice polished by years of being believed. "In my professional opinion, Mr. Moretti's recent decline suggests impaired judgment and diminished capacity in matters requiring sustained cognitive control." Vincent looked at him. Not angry, empty. "Read the next line." Dr. Vale did. "Temporary authority should be transferred to Marco Moretti pending reevaluation." Lily's fingers tightened around Molly. Vincent reached inside his coat and placed the blue-capped bottle on the white tablecloth. The small plastic sound made Isabella blink. Then he placed the fake bottle beside it. Then the torn strip of label from the flower trash. Then the photo of Clara's safe log. Then the recovered hallway still showing Isabella in the dark staff coat during the missing 47 seconds. Then the pharmacy invoice billed through Isabella's charity foundation and delivered to Dr. Vale's private clinic. Piece by piece, the room changed from a family meeting into something colder. Marco leaned forward. "What is this supposed to be?" Vincent did not answer him. Polly connected a small drive to the room screen. The recovered footage flickered to life. The timestamp read 1:12 a.m. A figure crossed the hall wearing the dark staff coat. The frame sharpened. Cream silk showed beneath the sleeve. A gold bracelet flashed at the wrist. Isabella did not move. Dr. Vale closed his folder. On the screen, Isabella used Clara's badge at the safe. The video skipped, then returned with her turning away, a bottle in one hand and a torn label stuck to her cuff. Lily lifted one finger from Molly's arm and whispered. That's when she changed its coat. The room heard her because no one else was breathing. Vincent looked at the screen, then at Clara standing against the wall with her badge still clipped to her uniform like a wound. His face went pale in a way sickness had not made it pale. It was not fear. It was the quiet pain of a man realizing the truth had begged for space in his own house, and he had almost let power crush it. Marco recovered first. A camera angle proves nothing. She was trying to help. Clara's badge was compromised. This is internal. Vincent turned the page of the lab report and slid it across the table. Independent toxicology, he said. The lawyer nearest Marco read it and stopped halfway down the page. The medicine in the glass was not Vincent's prescribed dose. It was a slow weakening agent, enough to blur speech, loosen grip, cloud memory. Enough to make a living man look unfit to hold a pen. Dr. Vale whispered, "This can be medically contextualized." Then Polly played the watch recording. Marco's voice filled La Vela, low and impatient. "Need the blue cap problem gone before the signing." Dr. Vale's voice followed. "Once the certification is read, he won't have standing to challenge it." Isabella's voice came last, soft and furious. "That child wasn't supposed to be in the hallway." No one spoke. The sentence hung above the table, perfect and fatal. Lily stepped closer to Clara. Not proud, Not triumphant, only very small. "I was just getting water," she said. Vincent looked at her then, and for a second he could not speak. The most dangerous men in the room had built contracts, prescriptions, cameras, badges, and silence around a lie. A 4-year-old with a rag doll had walked through it because she remembered a blue cap. Vincent removed his silver signet ring and set it on top of the unsigned transfer papers. The sound was soft, final. He looked at the attorney at the end of the table and said, "Seal every document in this room." The attorney rose before anyone else could pretend the room was still a family meeting. "No one touches the table," he said, and for once the order did not come from a Moretti. Clear evidence sleeves were brought from Polly's case and laid beside the white tablecloth. The blue cap bottle went in first, then the fake bottle, the torn label from the flour trash, the lab report, the recovered footage drive, the pharmacy invoice, the safe log, Clara's badge record, the medical incapacity packet, and the unsigned transfer papers under Vincent's silver ring. Each item was photographed where it lay. Each item was numbered. Each witness at the table signed the chain of custody sheet before leaving the room. Isabella sat very still, as if beauty could remain innocent if it did not move. Marco's face had gone hard and bloodless. Dr. Vale kept one hand on his folder until Vincent looked at it. Then the doctor let go. "You are all done speaking in private," Vincent said. His voice was weak, but it carried to every corner of La Vela. The attorney called the medical board, then the firm's outside counsel, then the authorities who handled fraud, controlled prescriptions, and financial crimes. Vincent did not let Polly handle it quietly. He did not let Marco call it a misunderstanding. He did not let Isabella leave through the kitchen door where staff came and went unseen. By the end of the hour, Dr. Adrian Vale was removed from Vincent's care and reported for falsifying medical certification. Isabella Crane's access to Vincent's medical records, charity accounts, and residence was revoked in writing before witnesses. The engagement ended without drama, without a ring thrown, without one last performance. Marco Moretti was suspended from every signing authority tied to Moretti Hospitality Group, Harbor Holdings, La Vela Management, and the family's legal entities until the investigation finished. The papers he had prepared to take Vincent's voice became the papers that took his own power away. Only then did Vincent turn toward the wall, where Clara still stood with Lily pressed against her skirt. Clara had not moved closer to the table. Even after the truth came out, she stood where years of service had trained her to stand, near the edge, ready to be dismissed. Vincent saw that, and the shame of it settled heavier than sickness. "Mrs. Bennet," he said. Clara flinched at the sound of her name in that room. Vincent looked to the attorney. "Read it." The attorney opened a fresh document. His voice filled the private dining room with words Clara had never expected anyone to write for her. Clara Bennet was cleared of wrongdoing. Her employee file would show no disciplinary action. The false badge implication would be corrected. She would receive paid leave, legal representation, safe housing separate from the mansion, medical coverage for Lily, back pay for every hour withheld during the investigation, and a written apology entered into company records. A new staff protection policy would require witness preservation, badge audit review, and legal counsel before any employee could be accused by a family member or executive. It was not a gift. It was a correction. Clara covered her mouth, but she did not bow her head this time. Vincent looked at her in front of everyone who had watched her shrink. "Clara Bennet did not raise a liar," he said. "She raised the only witness brave enough to tell the truth before I swallowed it." Lily looked up at him with Molly tucked under her chin. "So you can drink the right one now?" The question was so small, so plain, that it broke something in the room no confession had touched. Vincent lowered himself slowly to one knee, not as a boss, not as a king, but as a man alive because a child had noticed a blue cap. "Because of you," he said, "I get to live long enough to choose better." Weeks later, the blue-capped bottle sat sealed in a small glass case at La Vela beside Vincent's father's old watch and a copy of Clara's restored record. Not hidden, not buried, seen. On a quiet evening after the restaurant closed, Clara and Lily ate at the corner table under warm lights. Not in the service hallway, not in the kitchen, but in the room where their truth had finally been heard. Vincent watched Lily lift a full glass of milk with both hands, and when she smiled at him over the rim, the most powerful man in the room said nothing, because the smallest voice had already said enough. "Don't open that drawer, sir." Vincent Moretti's hand stopped inches from the brass handle. The room froze with him. Miles Crow holding a silver coffee tray too close to the desk, Isabella Vale standing in the doorway with her pearls shining like small teeth, and Clara Bennett, 8 years old, pointing with one trembling finger at the bottom drawer while clutching a wooden toy box against her chest. Behind the dark slit of the drawer, something clicked once. Clara whispered, "That's Mommy's sound." 3 hours earlier, the rain had not yet reached the windows of the Moretti estate, but the house already felt like it was waiting for a storm. Clara stood at the edge of the upstairs hallway with her one-eyed stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her arm, watching grown-ups move in polished shoes across floors so clean they reflected their lies. Nobody had told her to stand there. Nobody ever told children where to stand in that house unless they wanted them gone. Downstairs, the office door was half open, and from inside came the smell of cigar smoke, lemon oil, and Isabella Vale's perfume, the sweet white flower kind that always arrived before she did. Clara held her wooden toy box with both hands. It was too big for her, the corners worn pale from being carried from room to room, but she would not let Miles take it. He had asked twice that morning. The first time, he smiled and said it was heavy. The second time, he said Mr. Moretti did not like clutter near business matters. Clara had hugged it tighter because inside were the last small things that still belonged to her mother. A torn white ribbon, a folded napkin from La Vela Rosa, half a strip of old white tape with the letter seal written in faded marker, and the stuffed rabbit whose stitched belly felt harder than it should. In the office below, Vincent Moretti sat behind the walnut desk, black suit sharp as a closed blade, gold family ring resting beside a stack of papers Arthur Bellamy had arranged with careful hands. The lawyer's pen lay perfectly straight across the top page. Isabella stood near Vincent's shoulder, not touching him, close enough to look devoted and far enough to look innocent. "This is only temporary," she said softly. "The child needs structure." Evelyn filled her head with fear. Clara stopped on the staircase when she heard her mother's name. Evelyn Bennett. In that house, the name was never spoken like a person. It was spoken like a stain. Vincent did not look up at first. He held the paper in one hand, the old silver watch on his wrist catching the desk lamp. "And this removes the girl tonight?" he asked. Arthur cleared his throat. "It transfers her into safe interim care pending review. Given Evelyn's theft and instability, it is the cleanest option." Cleanest. Clara had heard grown-ups use that word before when they meant no one would have to look at the mess. She stepped down one stair, then another, careful not to let the toy box knock against the railing. At the office door, Miles Crow appeared with a coffee tray and looked directly at her. His face stayed polite. His eyes did not. "Miss Clara," he said low and smooth, "you should be upstairs." She looked past him into the office at the bottom drawer of Vincent's desk. The drawer Miles had dusted that morning even though no one had opened it. The drawer her mother had once pointed to without touching, lips pale, whispering, "If anything happens, don't let them open it first." Clara did not understand first. First before what? First before whom? But children remember the shapes of fear even when they do not understand the language of it. She remembered her mother's fingers smelling like soap and metal. She remembered the small silver recorder Evelyn used to hide under the kitchen shelf with a magnet. She remembered the little click when it woke, and the soft hiss when it listened. Now, as Vincent reached for the lower drawer, Clara saw it. A black thread, thin as a single hair, stretched from the brass handle down under the desk. Not a lock, not a mistake, a waiting trap. If the drawer opened, the thread would break. Someone would know. Miles shifted his tray, blocking the side of the desk. Isabella smiled at Clara as if she were a guest at a charity luncheon instead of a child about to be removed from the only place her mother had vanished from. "Sweetheart," Isabella said, "this is not a room for little girls." Vincent finally looked up. His eyes were dark, unreadable, the kind of eyes men lowered their voices around. "Why is she here?" he asked. Clara wanted to step back. She wanted Sal Romano to appear at the hall corner with his slow limp and quiet face. She wanted her mother to come through the servant door and say everything was a misunderstanding. Instead, Clara walked into the office just far enough for the rain light to touch her shoes. She set the one-eyed rabbit on the floor, kept the toy box tight against her ribs, and pointed at the drawer. "Don't open that drawer, sir," she whispered. The words were so small they should have disappeared. They did not. Vincent's hand stopped. Arthur's pen rolled off the paper and clicked against the desk. Miles moved one step forward, then caught himself. Isabella's fingers rose to her pearl necklace, touched one bead, and fell away. "Clara," she said, voice still gentle. "You are confused." But Clara was not looking at her. She was looking at the black thread. Vincent followed her gaze. For a long second, no one breathed. Then, from inside the bottom drawer, beneath the polished wood and the unbroken thread, came one tiny sound. Click. The click was too small for a room full of dangerous people, but it changed the room anyway. Vincent Moretti did not move his hand closer to the drawer. He let it hover there, 2 inches from the brass handle, his gold signet ring catching the desk lamp like a warning flare. Miles Crow gave a soft, controlled laugh, the kind servants used when they wanted fear to look like patience. "Old wood, sir," he said. "The lower drawer sticks when the weather turns damp." Clara's finger stayed pointed at the black thread. She did not look at Miles. She knew better than to look at grown-ups who wanted children to feel small. Isabella crossed the room slowly, every step quiet on the rug, her white dress untouched by the rain-dark light at the windows. She knelt beside Clara with the grace of someone posing for a charity photograph and reached for the ribbon on Clara's wrist. Clara pulled her hand back. Isabella's smile did not break, but something behind it tightened. "Sweetheart," she said, soft enough to sound kind. "This is what fear does. It makes ordinary things sound like monsters." Vincent's eyes moved from Clara to Isabella, then to Miles, then back to the thread. He did not ask about monsters. He asked, "Who put that there?" No one answered quickly enough. Arthur Bellamy stepped forward before the silence could become accusation. He bent, studied the thread as if it were beneath his profession, and straightened with a mild sigh. "A housekeeping marker, perhaps. Mr. Crow's staff sometimes use simple methods to detect tampering. Given the sensitive nature of this office, it is not unreasonable." Clara shook her head once. "Mommy said bad men do that." Isabella's hand returned to her pearls. One touch, one bead, then gone. "Evelyn told her many things," she said. "Most of them unhelpful." The name struck Clara harder than the insult. Evelyn, not Miss Bennet. Not her mother. Just Evelyn, spoken like a stain on polished wood. Arthur opened the folder on Vincent's desk and turned it toward him. "This is exactly why the transfer should not be delayed," he said. "The child has been left with confused loyalties, false impressions, and emotional dependency on a woman who committed a serious breach of trust." The top page bore Evelyn Bennett's signature near the bottom. Clara could not read every word, but she saw the name. She saw the line beneath it. She saw the color. Blue. Her stomach tightened so fast she almost forgot to breathe. Vincent saw her face change. "What?" he said. Clara hugged the wooden box closer, her cheek nearly touching the worn lid. "Mommy didn't sign with blue." Arthur's expression softened into professional pity. Children often attach meaning to small things. "She didn't," Clara said. Her voice was thin, but it did not break. "She used black for grown-up papers. Always black." She said, "Blue ink looks like borrowed truth." For the first time, Vincent's gaze left the drawer completely. It dropped to the signature. Blue ink. Smooth. Confident. Too clean. Isabella rose beside Clara, no longer kneeling, and looked down at her as if the child were something left out of place. "Clara, darling, you cannot possibly remember every pen your mother used." Clara whispered, "I remember Mommy's hands." Rain tapped harder against the glass. On the desk, Arthur's silver pen lay perfectly straight, its cap banded in blue enamel. Vincent noticed it. He did not reach for it. He did not accuse anyone. He only lifted his old silver watch, glanced at the time, and set it down beside the unsigned transfer papers. "When was this signed?" he asked. Arthur replied smoothly, "The night Evelyn left the estate." "Left?" Clara repeated, so quietly it barely became a word. Miles shifted the coffee tray from one hand to the other. The porcelain cups trembled, just once, and one dark drop fell into the saucer. Vincent looked at the drop, then at the blue signature, then at the black thread still stretched unbroken from the drawer handle. He picked up the transfer order, not to sign it, but to hold it closer to the lamp. Under Evelyn's blue signature, pressed faintly into the paper beneath, was the ghost of another line written before it. La Vela Rosa, Table 12.
La Vela Rosa, Table 12.
The words were not written in ink. They were buried in the paper like a bruise, pressed there from whatever page had lain above it before Arthur Bellamy replaced one truth with another. Vincent tilted the sheet under the lamp, and the indentation surfaced for a second, faint but real. Arthur's mouth opened, then closed. Isabella's hand went to her pearls again, not a gesture of fear, not quite, but too practiced to be nothing. Clara stared at the words without understanding all of them. She only knew La Vela Rosa was the red restaurant with the folded napkins her mother sometimes brought home, the ones Evelyn turned into little boats on rainy nights. Vincent set the paper down carefully. He did not raise his voice. He did not look at Isabella. He looked at Clara. "What exactly did you hear that night?" Clara's throat moved. The room had too many adults in it, too many shoes, too many quiet eyes pretending not to wait for her to make a mistake. She hugged the wooden box tighter until its corner pressed into her ribs. "The first sound was the click," she said, "like when Mommy's recorder woke up." Miles gave a small breath through his nose, almost a laugh. Clara kept going. Then the hiss, not loud, like when the tape is listening. Vincent's eyes narrowed, not at her, but at the drawer. And then, Clara looked down at her one-eyed rabbit on the floor. For a moment, she was not in the office. She was back in the hallway on the night her mother disappeared, bare feet cold against the marble. The office door almost closed, her mother's voice coming through the thin dark line near the frame. "Mommy said my name." Clara swallowed. She said, "Clara, don't touch the drawer." Isabella's face softened in public sympathy. "That poor child," she murmured. "She has been carrying a nightmare like a memory."
No, Clara whispered.
"It was a memory." Arthur adjusted his cuff. "Mr. Moretti, with respect, this is not testimony. A child half asleep in a hallway cannot distinguish a dream from a private conversation." Clara opened the wooden toy box before her courage could leave. The tiny hinges squeaked. Inside lay the torn white ribbon, the folded restaurant napkin, and a half strip of old white tape. She took the tape out with both hands as if it might break from being looked at. Faded marker showed 3 letters. CLA. "Mommy put this on it," she said, "because I thought it was candy once." She laughed. But then she said grown-up things can hurt even when they look small. Vincent reached out, but stopped before touching the tape. He glanced at Sal Romano. Sal stepped forward, slow because of the old injury in his leg, and took a handkerchief from his pocket before accepting it. Miles watched that handkerchief. Not Clara. Not Vincent. The tape. Clara noticed. Children noticed where fear looked. Vincent followed her gaze and then lowered his eyes to the desk. The black thread still ran from the brass handle to the underside, unbroken. But just above the drawer's left edge, where the polished walnut caught the desk lamp, there was a curved scratch no longer than a thumbnail. A little crescent. Clara pointed. "That's from the cracked side," she said. "The silver recorder had a broken corner. Mommy cut her finger on it once." Miles stepped forward at once. "Sir, that mark has been there for years. The desk is old." "I did not ask when the desk was made," Vincent said. "I asked nothing." The quiet that followed was worse than shouting. Miles lowered his eyes, but not before Vincent saw the mistake. Too fast again. Too clean again. Vincent leaned closer to the scratch without touching it. Around it, the wood gleamed faintly wet. Lemon oil. Fresh. Only there. Not across the whole drawer front. Not on the brass handle. Just around the little crescent, as if someone had polished the wound and forgotten the rest of the body. Vincent turned his head. Who cleaned this desk after Evelyn left? I did, sir, Miles answered immediately. The cups on his tray trembled again, one porcelain rim clicking against another. Sal's voice came from near the door, rough and low. That office was sealed for 3 days after Miss Bennet left. Arthur looked at him sharply. Sealed for internal review, yes. Sal did not look away from Vincent. The master key was in your safe. I put it there myself. Isabella's smile finally changed shape. Not much. Just enough for Clara to see the kindness leave before it returned. Vincent placed the blue-signed paper beside the torn tape, then rested his hand flat on the desk, inches from the scratch. He had not believed the child. Not yet. But he had stopped believing the room. And beneath the crescent mark, in the thin line where the drawer met the frame, a bead of fresh lemon oil trembled and slid downward onto the black thread. The bead of lemon oil reached the black thread and hung there, trembling, bright under the desk lamp like a tear that did not belong to anyone brave enough to cry. Vincent watched it without blinking. Miles watched Vincent watching it. That was the first real mistake. In the Moretti house, men survived by keeping their eyes where they were supposed to be, and Miles Crowe had spent 20 years perfecting obedience so smooth it looked like furniture. Now his gaze had betrayed him for less than a second. Vincent straightened. Closed the door. Sal Romano moved before anyone else did. His limp soft against the rug, and shut the office door with a careful click. Isabella lifted her chin, still, composed. Vincent, this is becoming unnecessary. The child is frightened, and everyone here is feeding the fear. Arthur Bellamy gave a sympathetic nod, as though he were defending Clara from the room instead of burying her beneath it. A brief pause may be best. The transfer papers can wait until morning. Clara heard the word transfer and tightened both hands around her wooden box. Morning sounded worse than tonight. Morning meant people would smile, pack her clothes, and say it was for her own good while the drawer stayed closed forever. Vincent's eyes shifted to her. You said your mother's recorder had a magnet. Clara nodded. On the back. She stuck it under the kitchen shelf, so she could say groceries while she cooked. Miles let out a small, almost tender sigh. Sir, many household devices have magnets. A child may be mixing memories. Arthur's voice stayed mild. And old desks can contain nails, brackets, repair plates. A magnetic reaction would prove nothing. Then it will cost you nothing to watch, Vincent said. He reached toward Arthur's folder and removed a silver paperclip from the top of the transfer packet. Arthur's mouth tightened so slightly that only Clara, who had learned to read adults before they punished her, noticed. Vincent placed the paperclip on his palm. Phones on the desk. Isabella turned. Excuse me? All of them. No one argued after that, but the silence changed temperature. Isabella laid down her slim white phone. Arthur placed his beside the blue enameled pen. Miles hesitated with his hand near his jacket pocket, then produced a black phone and set it down screen first. Vincent looked at the screen. Face up. Miles obeyed. Clara stood near Sal now, small in the grand office, the bottom of her dress damp from where the rain had blown in by the hall window. She was not crying. She was counting in her head the way Evelyn had taught her when grown-ups talked over her. For corners of the room, 3 windows, 2 doors, 1 truth. Isabella crossed her arms gently, not angry, almost maternal. Clara, sweetheart, if this little test proves nothing, you must stop frightening yourself. Clara looked at the paperclip, not at Isabella. I'm not frightening me. For the first time, Arthur's polite face lost its softness. Vincent crouched beside the desk without touching the thread. He held the paperclip near the lower right corner first. Nothing. He moved it along the bottom edge, slow enough that everyone had to watch the tiny strip of metal hover beneath the polished wood. Nothing. At the back corner, nothing. At the front left, Clara's breath caught before the metal moved. The paper clip trembled. Once, twice. Then it snapped upward and clung to the underside of the drawer with a dry little tick. No one spoke. Outside, rain slid down the window in silver lines. Inside, Isabella smiled as if silence itself had insulted her. "A nail," she said. "The desk is old." Vincent did not answer. He pulled the paperclip free, crossed to the upper drawer, tested it. Nothing. He tested the middle drawer. Nothing. He tested the brass trim on the right. Nothing. Then he returned to the lower left corner. The paperclip jumped again, harder this time, as if something hidden beneath the wood had reached for it. Clara's fingers curled around the edge of her toy box until the old lid creaked. "That's where Mommy hid it," she whispered, when she didn't want grown-ups to call her a liar. Miles gave a careful laugh. "Mr. Moretti, if I may, this office has been repaired many times. Your father had modifications done after the fire in '98. Sal's head turned. "Not that corner." Miles looked at him. "You cannot remember every repair. I remember the ones done after a fire that nearly killed my boss's father." The room fell still again. Vincent stood. His face showed no anger, which somehow made Arthur step back half an inch. "No one touches that drawer." Arthur recovered first. "Of course. We should bring in a proper technician. Document everything correctly. Avoid contamination." Vincent looked at Clara, then at Sal. "Good idea." Arthur's shoulders eased. Isabella's smile returned, warm and relieved, as if order had been restored. Then Vincent added, "Sal will record it, from the thread to the wood to whatever is underneath." Miles glanced down at his phone on the desk. The screen had lit, without a sound. A notification banner disappeared before anyone could read the whole message, but Vincent saw enough. "Is it open yet?" Vincent did not reach for Miles's phone. He only looked at the screen long enough for the words to burn into the room, then looked away as if he had seen nothing. That was worse than accusation. Miles stood perfectly still, his gloved hand resting near the tray, his face arranged into the same patient mask he had worn through funerals, dinners, threats, and family meetings. Isabella's gaze flicked once toward the phone, then back to Vincent, soft and unreadable. "A message from staff, perhaps," Arthur Bellamy said, too gently. "This house is full of people tonight." "Then no one will mind if we keep recording," Vincent said. Sal Romano took out his phone, turned on the camera, and announced the time in his rough voice. He filmed the black thread first, unbroken and slick with a bead of lemon oil. He filmed Vincent's hands empty. He filmed Clara standing beside him with the wooden toy box pressed to her chest, far enough from the desk that no one could say she had planted anything. Vincent opened a drawer in the side table and removed a pair of black leather gloves, the kind he used when handling old weapons from his father's collection. He put them on slowly. The room watched every finger disappear into leather. Then he nodded to Sal. "Say what you see." Sal moved closer. "Thread attached to lower drawer handle. Runs under the desk. No one has opened it since the child pointed it out." Arthur gave a faint sigh. "This is unnecessary theater." Vincent did not look at him. "Theater is for people who need applause. This is evidence." Clara heard the word and held her breath. Evidence sounded stronger than memory, stronger than please, stronger than nobody believes me. Vincent took a small silver letter opener from the desk and cut the thread. It snapped with a tiny sound that made Miles's jaw tighten. Vincent opened the drawer half an inch, then stopped. Inside was nothing but old stationery, a dry fountain pen, and a row of sealed envelopes. Isabella's shoulders eased. "There," she said softly. "An old desk, an anxious child, and a house full of suspicion." Clara shook her head. "Not there." Vincent turned his head slightly. "Where?" Clara pointed lower. "Under." Sal crouched painfully and brought the camera beneath the drawer. There, under the bottom panel, was a hairline seemed no wider than a fingernail. Vincent pressed near the left corner. Nothing. He pressed again, harder. A thin wooden plate loosened and dropped into his gloved palm. Behind it, Wrapped in a stained red cloth napkin lay something small and silver. Clara made a sound that was not crying and not breathing. Vincent unfolded the napkin. La Vela Rosa was embroidered on one corner in faded red thread. On the other, written in pencil, were the words Table 12. Inside the cloth was a recorder, cracked along the left edge, with a strip of white tape across its back. The marker had faded but not vanished. For Clara, if I don't come back. Isabella did not touch her pearls this time. She became too still. Vincent stared at the recorder for a long moment, and something old moved behind his face. Not grief. Not yet. Recognition. He remembered Evelyn Bennett standing in this same office months ago with a tray of coffee she had not spilled, saying there were papers he needed to see before the wedding. He remembered telling her to bring it to Bellamy. He remembered Isabella laughing afterward and calling Evelyn dramatic. Clara whispered, "Mommy said she had to make her voice small so it could hide." Vincent set the recorder on a clean sheet of paper. "Sal, keep filming." He pressed play. Static filled the room, rough and damaged. Then Evelyn's voice came through, low and shaking but unmistakable. "I did not steal from Mr. Moretti. I copied the real papers before Bellamy changed them." The static tore across the next words. Then a woman's voice, distant and smooth, slipped through the noise. "Once he signs after the wedding, the port accounts move clean." Arthur spoke immediately. "Damaged audio. No date stamp. No authentication." This proves nothing except that Evelyn recorded herself making accusations. Vincent paused the recorder. He looked at Arthur, then at Miles, then finally at Isabella. "Then you won't mind if I find the rest of what Evelyn copied?" Isabella's smile returned, but it arrived a second too late. Isabella's smile returned, but it arrived a second too late. Vincent saw the delay the way he saw a crooked card in a rigged game, not because it was loud, but because it was trying too hard to look natural. The recorder sat between them on the clean sheet of paper, small and silver and wounded along one edge, wrapped no longer in silence but in a red restaurant napkin that had begun to matter more than anyone in the room wanted it to. Clara kept staring at the embroidered words, La Vela Rosa, as if the thread had pulled something out of a place in her chest she had tried to keep locked. "Mommy used to bring those home," she said. Her voice was quiet, not childish now, only tired. She folded them into boats when it rained. Outside, rain tapped the glass harder, soft at first, then steady, turning the windows black. For one strange second, the office felt almost ordinary. A child remembering paper boats, an old man filming with a phone, coffee cooling untouched on a tray. Then Clara added, "She said if she was late, I should look for the red room." Arthur's eyes shifted toward Isabella. It was the smallest movement, but Vincent had built an empire by noticing the moment a man checked where the exit was. "Red room," Vincent said. Sal lowered the phone just enough to answer. "Private dining room at La Vela Rosa. Behind the velvet curtains. Your father used it for family meetings before everything had a lawyer's letterhead." Arthur gave a dry little laugh. A child could hear that phrase anywhere. "The restaurant is well known." Clara shook her head. "Not the restaurant. The room." She opened the wooden toy box again. Her fingers moved past the torn ribbon and the half strip of tape, then stopped on the one-eyed rabbit. She looked at Vincent once, asking without words for permission to do something she had been afraid to do for a long time. Vincent nodded. Clara pressed her thumb along a loose seam in the rabbit's belly. The stitches had been opened and closed again by hands that knew how to hide panic inside something soft. From the stuffing, Clara pulled a thin plastic hospital tag, bent in half and yellowed at the edges. She held it out to Sal first, not to Isabella, not to Arthur, not even to Vincent. Sal took it with his handkerchief and turned it toward the camera. E. Bennett, St. Agnes Private Care. The date printed beside the name was 3 days after the night Evelyn had supposedly fled the city. The room changed again. No one gasped. No one shouted. But the lie had gained a body. "She didn't leave that night," Clara whispered. "Mommy was somewhere with a bracelet." Isabella's voice softened so quickly it sounded rehearsed. "Vincent, Evelyn was not well. We tried to handle it privately because humiliating her would have been cruel. St. Agnes was a place where she could rest. Clara looked at her then, really looked with the terrible seriousness of a child who had run out of ways to be polite. Mommy wasn't sick, she said. She was scared quiet. Arthur stepped in at once. Medical privacy laws prevent us from discussing details in front of a minor. But you can discuss sending the minor away, Vincent said. The words were low, almost gentle, and that made Arthur stop. Vincent took the hospital tag from Sal, studied the date, then placed it beside the blue signature, the torn tape, the red napkin, and the recorder. The pieces did not form a full picture yet, but they had stopped being random. No one leaves the estate, he said. Not until I say so. Isabella's smile thinned. That sounds dramatic. Then be grateful I am calm. He turned to Sal. Clara stays with you. Not upstairs. Not with staff. With you. Clara did not say thank you. She only held the rabbit against her chest, now lighter and somehow sadder without the secret inside it. Vincent looked at the transfer papers again, at the clean blue signature, at the words La Vela Rosa pressed beneath a lie, at the tag that proved Evelyn had still been somewhere close enough to be controlled. And at last he understood the thing that made his face go still. Evelyn had not come to him to betray the family. She had come to warn him, and he had handed her warning to the very people who needed her gone. The understanding did not make Vincent loud. It made him quiet enough that even the rain seemed to lower its voice against the glass. He looked at the hospital tag, then at the recorder, then at Clara standing beside Sal with the one-eyed rabbit clutched against her ribs, and something in his face settled into a colder shape. Arthur, he said, prepare the papers again. Isabella blinked once. Miles looked up too quickly. Arthur's caution returned behind his glasses. Which papers? All of them, Vincent said. The transfer for the child. The asset language for after the wedding. The port account revisions. If this is clean, I want it clean enough to sign at La Vela Rosa tomorrow night. Isabella's smile came back carefully, as if she had chosen it from a drawer. That would be wise. Public enough to calm rumors. Private enough for family. Vincent nodded once like a man accepting advice. Clara's head turned toward him, hurt flashing across her face before she could hide it. Sal's hand came down gently on her shoulder. Vincent did not look at her because looking at her would have told the room too much. Instead, he picked up the recorder with gloved fingers, slid it into an evidence envelope from his desk, and sealed it with a strip of clear tape. Until then, the child stays with Sal. Arthur started to object. Vincent looked at him. The objection died before it had a shape. 10 minutes later, the office emptied in polished pieces. Isabella left first, her perfume lingering after her like a lie that refused to leave the air. Arthur gathered his folders, but not before Vincent photographed the blue signature and the indentation beneath it. Miles took the cold coffee tray, his phone face down again, his back too straight. When the door closed, Clara whispered, "Are you sending me away?" Vincent did not answer quickly. He took out his own phone and made one call. "Daniel Cross," he said when the line opened. "Independent counsel. No Moretti billing records. No Bellamy office. I need chain of custody tonight." Clara did not know what chain of custody meant, but she understood the way Sal exhaled. It sounded like a door being locked from the right side. Vincent crouched, not close enough to comfort her, but low enough that she did not have to look up like he was a judge. "I do not believe people because they cry," he said. "I believe what can survive being checked." Clara held the rabbit tighter. "Then check mommy." He nodded. "I am." The next hour moved without shouting. Sal took Clara to the small security room off the west corridor, where monitors glowed blue over steel desks and a half-finished cup of tea had gone pale beside a keyboard. Vincent stood behind the technician while footage loaded in slow gray blocks. The office camera from the night Evelyn vanished showed nothing for 7 minutes. Not static, not darkness, just a clean gap, cut too neatly. But the hallway camera survived. At 2:13 a.m., Miles Crow appeared outside Vincent's office with a folded stack of white towels. He did not knock. He used a key. Clara stood on tiptoe behind Sal and whispered, "He didn't carry towels like that." Vincent turned. "What?" "Towels for rooms go on his left arm," she said. "Mommy said good housepeople keep the right hand free for doors." That night, he held them in both hands because something was inside. The technician rewound. Miles's hands were stiff around the towels, protecting their shape. Vincent said nothing. A second file loaded. Keycard access. 11 minutes after Miles entered the office, Arthur Bellamy's card opened the records room. A third file came from an expense search cell pulled quietly from the estate accounts. A receipt from a dockside electronics shop for micro-recorder batteries, paid from a staff card assigned to Miles. Then Daniel Cross called back. His voice came through Vincent's speaker, flat and awake. "St. Agnes has a visitor log. Evelyn Bennett was admitted 3 days after your internal report says she disappeared. Financial guarantor was a charitable shell tied to Isabella Vale." The little security room went colder than the mansion halls. Clara did not smile. She only sat down in the nearest chair, as if the truth was heavier than being doubted. Vincent looked at the monitors, then at the drawing Clara had made on a yellow legal pad while the adults searched. The hallway, the office door, the rolling towel cart, and a narrow service door no one had included on the current security map. In the corner of the screen, at 2:17 a.m., that same service door opened by 1 inch, and a woman's hand appeared for half a second, wearing Isabella's pearl bracelet. The pearl bracelet appeared for less than half a second, but half a second was enough to change the weight of every breath in the security room. Vincent did not speak. He only watched the frozen frame until the tiny white beads on that woman's wrist became clearer than any confession Isabella had ever avoided. Clara stood beside Sal, her small hand still resting on the yellow legal pad where she had drawn the forgotten service door. "She said children remember fear," Clara whispered. "But I remembered the door." Vincent looked at the drawing, then at the screen, then at the evidence envelope holding Evelyn's recorder. Something pale crossed his face, not fear, but the colder pain of a man realizing the betrayal had not entered his house from outside. It had been dining at his table, wearing pearls and calling itself family. The next night, La Vela Rosa glowed as if nothing rotten had ever passed through its kitchen doors. Red awnings shivered in the rain. Men in dark suits stood near the entrance, and inside, behind the velvet curtains of the red room, a private table had been dressed for a celebration. Isabella wore white. Arthur Bellamy brought a black leather folder. Miles Crowe stood by the service entrance, hands folded, eyes lowered, almost invisible again. Clara entered with Sal, holding her wooden toy box against her chest. She was not dressed like she belonged there. Her shoes were plain, her ribbons slightly crooked, and her one-eyed rabbit sat tucked under one arm. But Vincent had ordered that she walk through the front door, not the kitchen. That alone made 3 men near the bar stop talking. Isabella's smile tightened. "Vincent," she said lightly, "I thought tonight was for family business." "It is," Vincent said. He took his seat at the head of table 12. Arthur opened the folder and began with polished calm, reading the clauses about post-wedding restructuring, charitable oversight, medical authority, and emergency transfer of port accounts if Vincent became incapacitated. The words were smooth enough to sound harmless, until Vincent lifted one finger. "Read that part again." Arthur paused. "Which part?" "The one where my wife-to-be gains authority over my medical and financial access after a private physician signs one letter." Isabella laughed softly. "Darling, that is standard protection." Vincent looked at her then, and the room seemed to lose 10 degrees. "Protection for whom?" Before she could answer, he set the first item on the table. Evelyn's blue-signed confession. Then the recorder. Then the red napkin embroidered La Vela Rosa, table 12. Then the hospital tag from St. Agnes. Then the still frame of Miles entering the office at 2:13 a.m. Then the keycard log showing Arthur in the records room. Then the electronics receipt for micro-recorder batteries. Then the St. Agnes visitor log naming Isabella's charitable shell. Each object landed softly. Each landing sounded final. Isabella's face remained composed until Clara opened the wooden toy box. The child took out the half strip of white tape with CLA on it and placed it beside the recorder. Sal, with careful hands, turned the recorder slightly. The two pieces of tape formed the message Evelyn had left whole before adults tore her life apart. For Clara, if I don't come back. Clara did not raise her voice. Mommy didn't hide it to hurt you, she said to Vincent. She hid it because she thought you might not listen until it was small enough to survive. For the first time that night, Vincent could not speak. Daniel Cross, the independent attorney, pressed play on the restored audio. Static breathed once. Then Miles's voice came through clean enough to make his hands uncurl at the door. The girl remembers the drawer. Arthur answered, colder than his courtroom voice. Then remove her before she becomes a witness. A pause. A glass set down. Then Isabella, unmistakable, smooth and bored. After the wedding, Vincent won't know which papers were ever real. The red room went still. Isabella looked toward Arthur, but Arthur had stopped looking at anyone. Vincent slowly opened the black leather folder and placed beside it the original contract Evelyn had hidden in the wine cabinet behind table 12. The real pages untouched, the port clauses never transferred, the signatures in black ink. Then Sal stepped in from the service corridor, placed a phone on the table, and Evelyn Bennett's weak voice filled the room. Vincent, don't let them take my daughter. Vincent stared at the phone as if it had struck him. Then he took off his signet ring, set it beside the recorder, and said very quietly, Daniel, call the authorities. Sal, lock the doors. Sal locked the red room doors, not to trap the truth inside, but to keep anyone from carrying it out in pieces. No one reached for a glass. No one reached for a phone except Daniel Cross, who stepped into the corner and spoke in the calm, exact voice of a man building a record. I need law enforcement at La Vela Rosa. Possible forgery, witness intimidation, unlawful medical confinement, financial fraud, and evidence tampering. Isabella stood very still in her white dress, the pearl bracelet on her wrist no longer elegant, only visible. Arthur Bellamy closed his folder slowly, but Vincent's hand came down on the leather before it could leave the table. That stays. Miles Crow looked toward the service corridor, then saw Sal standing there with two Moretti guards behind him. Not threatening, not touching, simply blocking the old way out. Clara sat beside Sal with her wooden toy box in her lap, watching adults finally become afraid of the things they had told her not to mention. Vincent did not shout at Isabella. He removed the engagement ring from the small velvet box waiting near her wineglass and placed it beside the restored audio transcript. The wedding is over, he said. Your access to my accounts, my properties, my foundation, my physicians, and my house ends tonight. Isabella's face hardened, but before she could speak, Daniel Cross laid another document on the table. The charitable shell connected to St. Agnes will be frozen pending review. Any attempt to move funds now becomes a separate count. Arthur tried one last time to sound like the room still needed him. Vincent, you are making decisions under emotional pressure. Vincent looked at Evelyn's hospital tag, at the blue signature, at the recorder with its cracked silver edge, and then at Clara. No, he said. I made the emotional decision months ago, when I believed papers because they were easier than listening. The police arrived through the front entrance of La Vela Rosa. Not the alley, not the kitchen, not the quiet side door families used when they wanted scandal to disappear. Daniel handed over the sealed evidence envelope, the copied footage, the keycard logs, the electronics receipt, the restored audio, the original contract from the wine cabinet, and the St. Agnes visitor record. Miles was escorted out first, his gloves removed and bagged. Arthur followed with his license still in his wallet but no power left in his voice. Isabella walked last, chin high, pearls shining beneath the red light, but every person in the room had heard her say Clara should be removed before she became a witness. By morning, St. Agnes Private Care was under independent review. Evelyn Bennett was not carried out like a secret. She was brought through the front doors in a wheelchair with a nurse beside her, Daniel Cross on one side and Sal on the other. Her medical file showed no lawful finding that she lacked capacity. Her admission forms carried Arthur's prepared language. The guarantor traced back to Isabella's foundation. Vincent met her not in a hallway, not in a service room, but inside the red room of La Vela Rosa, where staff, guards, family advisors, and the people who had once heard her called a thief stood in silence. Evelyn looked thinner than Clara remembered, but her eyes found her daughter first. Clara ran only 3 steps before stopping, as if afraid grown-ups would still tell her not to. Evelyn opened her arms. That was all it took. The toy box slipped from Clara's hands onto the carpet, and she folded herself against her mother so carefully it hurt to watch. Vincent waited until they were both ready. Then he stood at table 12 with the recorder sealed in a clear evidence box before him and read the statement Daniel had drafted but he had rewritten by hand. Evelyn Bennett did not steal from my family. She did not abandon her daughter. She warned me about forged documents and I failed to listen. Any record under the Moretti name calling her disloyal, unstable, or dishonest is revoked as of this moment. He signed it in black ink. Then he ordered copies delivered to every household file, every business office, every attorney involved, and every employee who had been told the lie. He did more than pay the hospital bill. He placed Evelyn under independent medical care of her choosing, restored her lost wages with damages, gave her separate legal counsel paid through an escrow he could not control, and arranged a safe apartment in her name, not his. Clara received school protection, counseling, and a trust supervised by Daniel Cross, with Evelyn as the first voice in every decision. For the staff, Vincent created a witness protection policy inside every Moretti business, with an outside hotline, legal review, and a written rule that no child, servant, driver, cook, cleaner, or assistant could be removed for reporting misconduct. Weeks later, the bottom drawer in Vincent's office remained unlocked and empty. The recorder was not there. It belonged in evidence until the case was done, and after that, Evelyn chose to keep it in a small frame beside the white tape Clara had saved. On the first quiet Sunday after everything changed, La Vela Rosa opened early just for 4 people. Evelyn sat by the window with tea. Sal drank coffee without pretending not to watch the door. Vincent placed a folded napkin in front of Clara, and she turned it into a small paper boat the way her mother had taught her. She pushed it across the table toward him and said, "This one doesn't have to hide." Vincent looked at the little boat for a long time, unable to answer, because in the end it was not power that saved the truth, but the child everyone had tried to send away, and the voice of a woman they finally chose to hear.